Good evening. It is Monday, March 9th, and this is a public meeting of the School Board of the West Bend Joint School District Number 1. More than 24 hours prior to the meeting, the notice of the time, place, date, and subject matter of this meeting was posted in each school building, the entrance doors at the Education Service Center, and at the West Bend Community Memorial Library. A copy was also sent to the Daily News, WIBD, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and other media sources who have requested notice of our meetings. Superintendent, can you confirm this meeting was properly posted?
Yes, it was.
Great, thank you. Mason, I'm going to ask you to come up here and get set up. And I'm going to introduce Mason. He's our local celebrity. And if you haven't seen some of the videos on Mason on YouTube or Facebook, it started with Mason playing the national anthem at our East-West boys basketball game. And video of that went viral. And I looked today, just over 970,000 views. And close to 2,000 comments. So Mason is a sixth grader at Silverbrook, and Mason has cerebral palsy. And March happens to be Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month, and so the disorder affects his movements, but certainly not his looks. And I can attest that this kid's a good kid. He's a good friend of my son. He's been over to our house to play, and on top of being good looking, he is truly a great kid. And so it was kind of a neat deal that Fox 6 News came up and did a story on Mason and his family, and also CBS News, and those stories have also had tons of hits online and things. So Mason, besides the East-West basketball game, he performed at the Fiserv Forum ahead of one of our, I believe it was a West girls basketball game. Just last weekend, he performed at a state playoff game with our West girls basketball team. So he's done this several times now, and I've really been looking forward to having him do this here for us. So would you all please rise and remove your hats for the playing of our national anthem? Nice job, Mason. And to the Bratz family, thank you so much for sharing Mason with us and the community. And, you know, when Mason was born, I think you were told that he may not ever walk, but obviously he's overcome that and doing great things and making us all proud. So we're green this month, not just for St. Patty's Day, but for Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month. So thank you very much. Let's see. Why don't we also stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, we have a pretty full agenda tonight. Tani Schmidt is out of town, excused absent tonight. Hopefully board members have had a chance to review your board packets. With that, I will make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Any questions about our agenda tonight? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. While we're being patriotic, I do have one quick recognition I want to make tonight, and I want to ask Mr. Jim Miller to please stand up. Jim is obviously one of our school board students this year and does a great job at that, but another reason to be real proud of this guy is he just accepted an appointment to the Military Academy at West Point. And I think most of you know that process is long and hard. It starts when you're a kid, and part of the process is getting a recommendation from a congressman, and Jim got his recommendation from Congressman Sensenbrenner, which is pretty cool, being that he's retiring soon. Will probably be his last recommendation for such a high honor like that. But a couple of things I want to tell you about Jim. He takes a lot of AP and articulated credit courses and gets a 4.0 in school. He's the president of Local Skills USA and has competed at the national level in broadcast news production, and he's been a champion in that category here in Wisconsin. He is also an award-winning member of the Science Olympiad team at the local and state level in aviation science and circuitry lab. He's involved in student council, Badger Boys State, and serves obviously as our school board representative. He's lettered in varsity football, track and field, and cross country. And outside of school, he's a participant in the Civil Air Patrol, where he's earned the Billy Mitchell Award and has attained the rank of cadet, second lieutenant, deputy cadet commander. And he's very involved in his church, ushering, Bible study classes, Historical Society volunteer, Farm Bureau volunteer, and works as well. But Jim, on behalf of the board, the community, we are extremely proud of you and wish you the best of luck at West Point. We've got a lot of cool recognitions tonight, and we're going to start with our boys co-op swim and dive team and recognizing our state qualifiers.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I want to thank the board for giving us the opportunity to introduce you to these outstanding athletes. I also want to congratulate all the athletes who made it to state in their particular sports. To my right here, I also want to introduce my very capable and outstanding boys diving coach, Pete DeTunk. He is a 1987 graduate of East. He was one of my first divers at he was actually second at state his senior year. So like I just stated, I've been around a little while. My other assistant coach, Deb Wickman, is not here. She handles all the beginning swimmers that come into the program, and we are very blessed to have these two people working with the program. The boys swim team had a very good season. Jan, our diver, and Kevin, one of our swimmers, were an important part of our success. Jan qualified for state in diving. He went into the state meet seated 5th and did a very solid job of diving all 11 dives and finished in 3rd place, so he made the podium. Kevin qualified in 2 swimming events, the 200 IM and the 500 freestyle. In the 200 IM, he was seated 17th and ended up in 10th place. And in the 500 freestyle, he was seated 7th and ended up in 4th place, making the podium. These two young men, Jan and Kevin, combined together to earn 38 points and give West Bend a 20th place finish at the state meet. Both of them have also earned all state honors, Jan in diving and Kevin in the 500 freestyle. Last thing I'd like to say, and I've been doing this awful long time. Some of you weren't even around when I started coaching. I have been blessed over the years with many outstanding swimmers and divers, and Jan and Kevin are 2 of the best. Thank you very much.
Joel, could I make a quick comment? we have a ton of great coaches in our school system. I don't know if I've ever been around a person like Jim who promotes his athletes as well as he does. There's not a weekend that I don't get an update about how phenomenal our swim and dive team has done. And so, Jim, I just thank you for your enthusiasm, and I know that you really, really promote your program as well as anybody I've ever seen. So thank you.
All right, we'll move on to East Gymnastics. Come on up.
I have Jordan and Paige. They are our two qualifiers for East Gymnastics. Our sectional is very tough. We have two of the top 3 teams in the state in our sectional alone. So to have qualifiers, that's a great feat in itself. Paige is also all-state in floor, and that is what she qualified for. And Jordan missed the podium by 0.0067 of a point. So Jordan's a junior and Paige is a sophomore, so hopefully next year we hit the podium for both of them.
Awesome. Congratulations. East Dance.
All right, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Jess. I'm the head coach with Ashley Rossman for the East Dance team. It's our first year coaching. Thank you to the board for letting us recognize Brianna and all of her amazing accomplishments. Although it was my first year coaching, I had the privilege to dance with Brianna years ago at a studio. She was much younger than me, but I got to dance with her from like this big on, so to watch her accomplishments here in high school is really awesome. The team did awesome this year. Brianna really highlighted some of the team's accomplishments. Just a background on Brianna, she's been on the team for all 4 years of high school. She's been a captain 2 years. She qualified for Rome her junior year and went to Rome to dance in the New Year's Day parade. This year, for competition for her solo, she placed at every competition in the top 10. Most of the competitions she placed in the top 5, and this was out of some competitions we had 30 to 40 people competing against her, and she was top 5 up there. She placed first team all conference at our North Shore Conference competition, and this was her 3rd time placing or qualifying for All-State for her solo. She has qualified 3 times now, and she made the D1 All-State team her sophomore year, the D2 All-State team her junior year, and then again made the D2 All-State team her senior year. So she went out with a bang and really impressed us. So good job, Brianna. Thank you.
All right, East-West Co-op girls snowboarding team. As you guys are coming up, we have a lot of students in the room, and we're going to ask Superintendent Kierkegaard to make a quick announcement about the band trip. And we're going to do that after all these recognitions. So if you're interested in hearing that after the recognitions, we'll ask Superintendent to do that. So take it away.
I'm Hunter Zaskowski. I'm the head coach of the high school snowboarding team. And our girls team this year was Sam Schaefer, Anna Cheng, Sam Caston, Alex Hotstetter, and Kaylee Reinick. The other 3 couldn't make it, unfortunately. And for our girls' results for the year, as a team, they placed 2nd place in border cross and 3rd in GS and slalom as at conference. And then we placed 5th at state for our girls' team. So that was really cool. And hopefully next year our girls' team grows more and we can continue that on going forward.
Great. Congratulations. Let's bring up the boys' state champion team. Nobody wore a medal or brought a trophy or anything?
Yeah, where's our trophy, Coach?
All right, so our boys' team is Brian Pomeroy, Cole Rommel, Ethan Benedict, Gavin Bayer, Preston Reiner, Nolan Caston, and Jack Felix. Individual top 10 results was Cole Rommel. He placed 1st in border cross 4th in giant slalom and 9th in slalom. Cole also won the state sportsmanship award, which was a really cool way of representing himself and our team. And then Nolan Caston placed 4th in border cross. Ethan Benedict placed 9th in border cross. And that's it for boys' individual results. And then for conference this year, we won all 3 events, slalom, giant slalom, and border cross. And then at state, we did take the state championship. And that was really awesome. That was the first time for our team. Last year, we took 2nd. So we keep improving and hope to see what next year brings.
I was stoked when I heard about that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's the right word, isn't it?
I don't know, ask the kids.
Very cool. Congratulations. All right, East Boys Bowling Team. They're all working tonight.
So
Kevin,
we'll
you take it
still
away.
recognize them. Coach Trinkle emailed me today and said that apparently the East Boys Bowling Team must be the hardest working team in the county, because every one of them is working tonight. So Ian Jansen, Jacob Klyerchek, Zach Soronuski, Nick Whitty, Anthony Burno, Triton Ellenbacher, and Cardi Classy are your East Boys state qualifiers.
Awesome. How about the East Girls State Champions? They brought their medals. Awesome.
And their trophies too, yeah.
Oh, there's the trophy. Nice.
I was gonna give that to Bethany so she would hold her still for a little while there. Plus, it looks bigger when she holds it. I wrote a speech this time because last year I just stood up here and drooled for 30 seconds, so thought I'd write something down this time. Most people don't even know that West Bend has a bowling team, or that we went to state. Oh, by the way, hi, Paul. Didn't know you were on the board. Tell you a little bit about how the bowling runs throughout the year. We start our season in September, runs through March, this last weekend. We bowl in 6 different bowling alleys. We'll have 10 9-game matches that we bowl, a total of 99 games on 3 different oil patterns. Oil patterns are different for high school teams. Generally, when you bowl in a fun league at night or whatever, or at a bowling alley, they're called a house pattern. They're generally easy to score on and easy to get high scores. These ladies bowl on what's called a sports pattern. They're very difficult bowling patterns. It's not easy to score on them, but they seem to do rather well because they averaged over all those 99 games, they averaged 162. Wow. With a record of 8-2. We would have tied the West girls for their 9-1 record, but apparently we were so good when we played the bye, we couldn't even beat ourselves. My hat goes off to the Lady Spartans. Had they been in Division 2, they would have gone to state, and John Gilliam would be up here making the speech. Let's see, where am I? Nonetheless, that took us off to state. From there, we bowled a 15-game qualifier on 15 different lanes on an oil pattern that we only got to practice once on. And with that, we came out with 2,724 pins with an average of 181, which gave us second place in the standings and an automatic spot on the TV finals on the Sunday, yesterday, where we bowled two games for the most pinfall. Our first match on Sunday was against the returning Division II state champs, Beaver Dam, with the winner going to bowl the number 1 seed, Anago, and the loser taking third. East won the first game against the Beaver Dam team, 176 to 173, and then the next game, 197 to 157, beating Beaver Dam by 43 pins. And this then put us in the championship game against Anago. East's first game was in the championship. We won 175 to 169, a 6-pin margin. Then the next game with Anago, they gave us some early openings early on in the game, and the East ladies took full advantage of that, and by throwing numerous strikes at them and totally taking on all the momentum, by the 8th frame it was pretty much all over, and East won by 62 pins total, with East bowling a 200 game and Anago bowling a 124. And with this, I give you the 2020 Division II Girls State Champion, West Bend East Lady Sons. Hold on, ladies. Hold on, ladies. I got pages here. Pages. Now, before I announce the ladies and recognize the ladies, I'd like to send a special thanks to Kingpin Bowling Alley for allowing us to practice over there. Without them, I don't think we could be as good as anything. And Mark Hort for assisting me out on the lanes and for practices. His knowledge of 10 years going to state and 2 championships really helped me out. And to Tom Zernia with Lighthouse Pro Shop, helping me get our players all geared up with bowling equipment, and his vast knowledge of bowling game and high school and college bowling. It's all been a great help. And a huge thank to Jill Walla, one of our parents, for raising money for the meat raffles to help build our program, keep it all afloat with special equipment, pizza parties, hotels, tournament fees, and the list goes on and on. And to all the rest of the parents that get all the bowlers to and from practices and buying more gear and balls and stuff, it's all great. Now I'll introduce the players. Freshman holding the trophy is Emily Zaromsky. Another freshman, up-and-coming good bowler, Alondra Chavez. Haley Kaler was a rock star at state. I don't believe in the championship round that she had one open. Abby Singer, one of our varsity bowlers. Maddie Bentley, in the qualifying round, I believe she threw 23 of her 30 shots strikes. Mackenzie Phillips, our only singles qualifier, was also hard at work getting us there too. Both of those two were MVPs. I'd like to leave tonight with something you might hear if you ever came to a bowling meeting. It's really great. Yeah, East! East, yeah, East!
Congratulations, ladies. Uh-oh. Bethany. All right. Our East wrestling team, state qualifiers with a state champion, come on up.
Now that's a tough act to follow. You know, I got couples bowling night at Kingpin on Friday night. I could use your help. He said it's so easy to score with those oil patterns, and I still can't do well. So. All right. Congrats to all the athletes and coaches, for being recognized today. It is really cool to be part of such a great community with such a lot of talent. Congrats to you, Jim. That's awesome. I know Mason's not here anymore, but it's just cool to be part of a great community with a lot of successful, ambitious, and skilled people, so it's fun to see. On to the wrestling team. So we had a 6-1 conference record for the second year in a row. We won 4 team tournament championships throughout the season. We got second in conference by just like under 5 points, and we lost in a close duel against NITA to qualify for a team state. So we had a really good year. And I'm here today to recognize 3 of our state qualifiers here today. All 3 were captains for us. I'm going to start out with senior Damian Zapata. He's the guy in the middle there. He qualified for state at 152 pounds. Although he didn't place, he has a lot to be proud of, including his 33-15 season record with a team-leading 24 pins. He also had 45 reversals, which is a new school record, and he ends his career with a 112-48 record. That's impressive, but it should be noted it's that much more impressive when you think he only started wrestling in the 7th grade. Damien will be going on to UW-Milwaukee in the fall to study business, and he will be sorely missed next year. Next is Crosby Schlosser to the left there. He's a junior. Crosby qualified for state for the 2nd time this year. He qualified last year as a sophomore, and this year he got on the podium, placing 5th place at state. He had a 42-9 record and heads into his senior year with a 108-58 career record. And we look forward, Crosby, to build on the momentum from this year and have a great senior campaign next season. Let's get on top of that podium. Last is Caden Henschel to the right. He's a senior. He qualified for state for the 3rd time. He placed 5th his sophomore year, and this year he became West Bend East's 5th state champion. He finished the season with a 48-1 record, leading the team in multiple categories, most notably season team points and career team points, of which both are now new team records. Caden finishes off his career with a 181-15 career record. In the fall, Caden will be attending UW Parkside, where he'll be studying marketing and continuing his wrestling career. So congratulations, gentlemen. Very proud of you guys.
Congratulations. We'll move on to our East-West Co-op ski team. Here they are.
Good evening, school board. I'm Derek Dorn, assistant ski team coach. This is Kai Breedis, another one of our assistants. Head coach John Cisan is out of town for work. We had a great season. We had 6 regular races against 23 teams for each of the varsity boys and girls. The girls varsity placed 4th overall in our conference, and the boys placed 6th overall in conference. Both teams qualified for the State Alpine Ski Championships, which is in La Crosse. This is the largest ski championship held in the United States. The boys placed 13th out of 21 teams at state, and the girls placed 7th out of 21 teams at state. Our state team girls was Olivia Heineke, Ashley Benson, Alyssa Hutchins, Madeline Dorn, Megan Hutchins, and Madeline Weiner. The boys state team was Marcus Breedis, Quinn McElhatton, Caden Bass, Spencer Schellinger, Aiden Cisan, Josh Davenport, and Isaac Benson. One last note, should be recognized, Coach Brad Davenport is retiring after 12 years of coaching on West Bend Ski Team. So and thank you again for recognizing our group of athletes in the West Bend Ski Team.
How about our West Girls Bowlers?
I'm John Gilliam. This is our 2 qualifiers for state that we had this year, Lexi and Addison Jazak. Lexi's our senior on our team. She's been 2-time captain. Okay, 3-time captain. This year she qualified for singles for her 2nd time, I believe, right? Third time. Yeah. I got her as captain.
That's what she said.
But she finished 36th this year. She had a rough outing on the first series, but she did all right. Addison went to state for her 2nd time for singles, and she went on to the semifinals this year, and she ended up finishing 13th. Both girls are a part of our 9-1 varsity team this year. We are a D1 team. The girls that were previously up here, they're our D2 team. There's just a few student difference that makes it unbelievable that we can be in 2 different divisions, but that's how it works out. And we had a great year this year, and we're hoping that next year we even get better and go on again. Thanks.
Congratulations.
I just got to come back up here. Besides missing senior Bethany Walla, we also had a gal that was a senior, Anne-Marie Costa. She also couldn't be here because of her grandparents not feeling so well, but I wanted to mention her. Thank you.
Thanks. West dancer Shelby Reese, come on up.
Okay, I want to say thank you again for letting us come and recognize Shelby. So today, obviously, we're here to honor our junior Shelby for qualifying for state in her D1 solo, Division I solo. There's so much talent across all the divisions in our state. To qualify for state in her division, in Division I solo, it's a huge accomplishment. So I'm going to make this really, really quick because I actually wrote a lot, so I'm going to try and squeeze it down. I want to take time just to talk about Shelby and her incredible talent and why this is such a big thing for us and for Shelby too. So she joined our team in 2017 as a freshman. Unfortunately, due to some previous injuries, she wasn't able to be in any of the competition routines her freshman year. Sometimes not dancing your freshman year can be disheartening and lead to lack of commitment and support for the team. However, not only was Shelby our team's biggest fan and supporter, her entire family was too. And so while Shelby would be screaming on the sidelines for her team on the floor, her parents would also be in the stands screaming for their team, which right away tells me the type of dedication I could expect to see from Shelby and her family in the coming years. So her sophomore year completely exceeded our expectations. When she returned for her tryouts, she blew away the judges. And I really mean that. The judges actually threw their papers up in the air after she walked out of her tryouts and said, how did that happen? Because they were there for her freshman year tryouts, and then they saw her sophomore year. So it just tells you the dedication that she went through and the growth that she made in that little bit of time. So she had one of the top scores in her tryout that season, made it to all competition routines that year. And when I had given her the option to do a solo her sophomore year, she declined because she wanted to focus on the team routine. So I knew I could expect big things from her this year, which she did. So jumping ahead to this year, her junior year, her tryout was still one of the top scorers, and she again made it into all of our competition routines. This year, she even had some spotlights in the routines, which helped our team immensely with her special skills. So each dancer qualifying for state in their solos must choreograph the routine themselves. They're not allowed to have someone choreograph the routine for them, and they actually have to sign a form at regionals that states that their routine is their own original choreography. So when Shelby first showed us her solo routine, I was in awe. It was completely stunning. She had the perfect amount of skill, tricks, flips, and dancing, and I knew it was a very strong routine. She did very well with her solo throughout the season and made tweaks to choreography as the feedback came in from each competition. When she took the floor at regionals, she was ready, and it was by far her best solo performance that we saw from her this year. And I knew in my heart that she was state worthy at that moment. She was confident, strong, and hit every move as it should. So we're very proud of Shelby, obviously, for making it to state, and cannot wait to see what your senior year holds for you.
We'll do a quick East-West Booster Club update.
Just waiting for him. No problem. So that should be up. Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you for letting me take a few minutes. I know your agenda's pretty packed tonight, so I'll try to be short and sweet. I'm Herb Justman. I'm on the West Booster. This is Lorelei Bennett. She's the East Booster president.
Secretary.
Sorry, yes. Okay, yes, sorry. Just letting you know that East and West Boosters have teamed up for one fundraiser. It's going to be a golf outing, August 17th, out at the county course. And now the reason that we're here tonight is to give you a quick update on what we have planned to do with the profits. So if you look up on the screen, what you may or may not know, our state trophies are all over the school. They're on side hallways. They're not displayed where they should be. All the state trophies should be in one area. We all kind of agreed. So the first phase of 2 phases is we picked the south gym entrance. This is looking from the south gym doors going towards the south gym. The next one is just looking. That's just looking from the other way. Now this is where we're going to take the soda machines out and put them in a side hallway. The trophy case is going to be there. We're going to put this will be the first phase. The trophy case, state trophies will be in this trophy case. It's already, obviously it's already hooked up for electricity. And another benefit, as we did a walkthrough, another benefit is when you come to an event and you buy a soda out of this machine, Pepsi makes the money. The boosters don't make any money. So taking these machines out, we put them on a side hallway. It's actually right opposite of this. These doors will be locked. The machines will be there, so during the day, the doors will obviously be open. Kids can get their sodas. But during events, those doors will be locked. You will have to go to the East Booster, West Booster, whoever the event is, and buy soda, and we'll generate more money that way also. Again, the machines will be taken out. Obviously, there's electricity, so that'll be, the cost will be a little bit down for that. So we don't have to get electricity in there. The second phase, I'll probably have to come back in a year, hopefully in a year. We were talking about having right from the, I guess you would say the west gyms or the main gym, there's a little enclave. There's electricity there too. It will be a little more extensive. It'll be a little more expensive, but we have some great ideas for that. Just to let you know that when we did this walkthrough and we were going through different ideas of what to do for this fundraiser and to generate some excitement, I was very pleased personally to see both the East and West president, the East and West ADs, the East and West booster presidents, and the boards were all in attendance. We all agreed on this fundraiser. And unfortunately, I was really hoping that we would have a bid. Mr. Ross, it's been about 2 months, and we still haven't gotten a bid on the project. So we're still working on that. Did you have anything else to add?
We're excited about teaming up, and we hope that this is the beginning of many projects that we can do to benefit all the athletes between East and West. We recognize that we're more powerful together to do some of these projects, and we just wanted your support with changing some roles and things like that. We want to make sure that everybody's excited about it as well, and also extend an invitation to you guys on August 17th. We'd love to see you there.
We'll hit you up, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Cool, thank you. Yeah. Before you all leave, I want to turn it over to some of your classmates here for a quick high school update from Emily and Jim.
Hi guys. So last week we actually had only a 3-day week, so there's been some stuff going on and we wanted to talk about it. The junior class has completed the ACT, hence the 3-day week, and will be receiving their results soon. The West Bend high schools have consistently placed above the national average for the ACT. On top of that, the remaining classes completed their virtual day assignments last week. Students were allowed the entire week to finish the online work posted on campus, and the work was counted as attendance for that day. Meanwhile, our AP students are busy preparing for the exams in May, which are now in perspective. The clubs at the high schools are involving students in many different capacities this March. Last Saturday, the Student Council hosted the charity dance with acclaimed celebrity DJ Mondo. The 5 schools involved had fun and were kept safe with the help of district administration and local law enforcement. West Forensics continues to astonish, placing first at the rigorous Sheboygan meet. The Skills USA state competition is coming up next month, and the students are busy harnessing their workplace, technical, and personal skills with the biweekly meetings and their advisors. Heat Club is selling tickets for the Kiwanis' annual pancake breakfast with the Easter Bunny. The tickets are $4.50 for children, 12 and under, and $7 for adults. Finally, with athletics, West Winter sports have concluded and spring sports have begun. The varsity girls basketball team finished 23-3, losing to Divine Savior's Holy Angels last Saturday before the dance. And we already talked about Alexis and Addison Jasak competing at the state bowling competition last Friday. And finally, we are really proud to announce that 5 West seniors have signed to collegiate athletics. Jack Miller signed to Rockford University for basketball. Kala Buchler signed at MSOE for soccer. Jacob Totten signed at Concordia for football. Mason Walschlager and Amelia Stowski signed at UW Oshkosh. Mason for track and football, and Amelia for softball. And just before I finish up, I didn't know I was going to be getting this recognition tonight. I also didn't know that my parents were going to be here.
I meant to ask where your parents are. Where are your parents? Right here. Yep.
I just wanted to give them a shout out just for supporting me the last 5-6 years of my life that I knew I had this goal. I couldn't have done it without them. From my dad giving me rides down to Milwaukee when I didn't have my driver's license to go to Civil Air Patrol, and my mom being there while I'm in the living room on the floor because I procrastinated for an essay. So I appreciate everything that they've done, and I love them a lot. So
we knew your parents were going to be here tonight, but anyway, that was some very kind words, and you've got a great kid up here. He's been fun to have as part of our board this year. So congratulations to you guys as well. Emily.
Hello, everyone. Like Jim said, the ACTs are finally over, which is a huge relief. A lot of stress is pulled off of everyone's shoulders. Virtual day for freshmen, sophomores, and seniors, as well as juniors, went extremely smooth. And also in good news, the charity dance and charity week was an absolute hit within the students. I think you would agree that the dance was pretty great. The charity week was a great way for the students to de-stress from the previous stressful week for ACTs, and they were able to dress up with pajama day, tie-dye day, throwback day, and other days. In athletics, like we covered earlier, all the East athletes, they definitely deserve all the recognition. But the upcoming athletic events, boys varsity lacrosse has a match up against Oregon High School on March 18th, and girls varsity track has a meet at Sheboygan North on March 20th. The school's trap team just started their season on March 3rd, and their first meet will be the 17th against Fond du Lac. Academically, students are in full swing with new units, projects, and assignments. Gov and Law students just finished their local government, their unit on local government, as well as how Washington County functions as a government. Chemistry students are using their time to balance chemical equations in order to use them in their lab scenarios. And biology students are just entered their new unit on evolution and biological relationships between organisms and their ancestors. Medical terminology is learning about the digestive tract, and personal fitness is discussing different ways students can stay active outside of school and how exercise and healthy diet can affect someone's attitude and energy level. In other news, the administrative team are extending the deadline to earn an extra day of flexi for the students by completing all of our Zello lessons to Friday, March 20th. The reasoning behind this is because they feel that preparing for the ACT and taking the ACT may have made it difficult for some of the students to support this opportunity. And we only need 18% more to finish by 3/20. On March 18th, Chamber Strings Orchestra is having a concert at the Old Courthouse, so be sure to go there. All East and West juniors will also have the opportunity to attend a college and career fair at the Washington County Fair Park. This is an opportunity for students to explore their options for after graduation by talking to local employers, military, and colleges or university recruiters. Thank you.
Nice job, Emily. Thank you. All right, we're going to have Superintendent Kierkegaard make a couple comments about our band.
Just a real quick comment, observation. I know some of you have heard about our music trip. We were originally scheduled to go to Italy over spring break. We knew that that wasn't a good option, and so I truly want to give a shout out to Miss Duckert, one of our band teachers. She really took the bull by the horns, and she was a phenomenal leader in this whole process. But when we go out of state or out of country, that process starts a year in advance. So those trips are all scheduled well in advance, and so for the Italy trip, we knew we couldn't go there, so we looked at, is there another place we should go during spring break? We knew with the coronavirus that might not be an option, so we decided, well, let's push it back until June. That gives us a little bit more time to make those decisions. And so visit with Mrs. Duckert tonight, and so we're going to probably recommend that we table that decision table it for a while to see what happens, that she's working on a full refund for all of the students who choose to go and will to not go. And so I think rather than make a decision tonight on maybe doing something in June that we don't know if it will or won't happen, we're going to recommend that we just table that, and we'll bring that back at a later time and seeing how things materialize with the coronavirus, both national and international. I'm going to meet with, or Laura and I are going to meet with all of the advisors Wednesday morning at 6:30, as well as Wednesday afternoon at 3:30, because we have quite a few trips that are scheduled between now and the start of the next school year. So whether it's a German trip to Germany, or I think Spanish students are going to South America, we have some a class that's going to the summer to California. All of those discussions need to happen before we're going to go anywhere. And so we're going to make sure that the advisors have everything lined up prior to making those decisions, and hopefully we can still go, but no guarantees. We need to always look out for the safety of our kids in our community, and we'll make those decisions as we go forward. But I really wanted to, we don't come at the last minute to do a trip someplace. Those out-of-state and out-of-nation trips really are scheduled as far in advance as we can. Typically a year if possible. Sometimes it's not quite a year, but it's close to a year. And the trip for the band really was scheduled in advance. Decided that wasn't going to happen. And so hats off to our advisors, because they really have been proactive in this whole process.
Okay, thanks for that. Any questions on that from board members? Public participation time. Residents of the district, parents of children in district schools, and employees of the district may participate. Each participant will be called to the podium and given 3 minutes to speak. The board will not engage in debate concerning the remarks or take immediate action. The board may refer the matter to the superintendent or a committee, or take the remarks into consideration in the future. I do have one slip tonight, and it's Jody Geenan. And after Jody, if there's anyone else who wishes to address the board, can come to the podium, but we'll start with Jody.
Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry that we have so many exciting things that happened tonight, and I feel like I'm changing the tone of the evening, but my name is Jody Geenan, and I am the only new candidate running against the team of 3 incumbents for school board. I am here because I believe that parents are the primary educators of their children, and that public school education should be a partnership between parents and teachers. Regarding the 9th grade biology curriculum, I do not believe the parents, guardians, and taxpayers were given a fair notice of a public review, and the times offered were extremely inconvenient for most people, 6:45 a.m. to 8 a.m. and 2:30 to 4, right when parents are in a hurry to drop their students off and rush to work, or pick them up to get their students to the next extracurricular event or job, or to pick up other siblings, and right when the parking lot is the most chaotic. No evenings or weekends were offered. I wasn't notified myself, except through a friend who received the notice and was frustrated. This seemed to be par for the course. I called the district and was accommodated with a private evening session, but they refused, even after several requests, to open the evening session up to the public. As expected, no one showed up to the inconvenient 2 earlier sessions, and only me and 4 of my friends were allowed to attend the evening session. All public comments to the board are from the private evening session. Reading Judy Steffes' article in the Washington County Insider today, I learned that the public was notified through a Facebook post only. Many people do not go on Facebook except to find pictures of family and friends. It's the best way to ensure that no one sees the notice. As for families who have students enrolled in the public schools of this school district finding their message, even Joel Ungert, who should be interested in such notices, must have missed it because, as he expressed during the February 24th school board meeting, he was pleasantly surprised that the public was invited to give input. I'm surprised that he was surprised, since the board touts that the public is always part of the new curriculum decisions. The board should be making sure parents and taxpayers are properly invited. Why don't we make an announcement through our wonderful local media, such as the Daily News, Boots and Sabres, or the Washington County Insider, which was surveyed a few years ago to be the #1 source used by the public. I was also surprised to find that the board members are not always interested in seeing the product that they are approving and justify not actually going through the books by passing the buck to the real experts, as they say. What is the purpose of getting the board's approval if they don't need to look at it? I am asking the school board to postpone approving the 9th grade curriculum until the public has been properly notified and offered more convenient viewing sessions. For anyone watching, if you believe in a transparent school district, if you want representation of all stakeholders in our community, if you believe parents should be allowed a voice in the education of their children, vote for me, Jody Geenan, for school board, the only new candidate. Bottom of the ballot, but top of your mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to address the board tonight? If not, we will move on to our consent agenda. On our consent agenda tonight, we have minutes of the February 3rd regular board meeting, minutes of the February 6th, 2020 special board meeting, disbursements posted to March 9th, 2020, revenues and expenses in the aggregate, January of 2020, administrator contracts, retirements, resignations, and a ratification of contracts.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second on the consent agenda. Any questions, comments? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Our first action item tonight is the Ice Bears Boys Ice Hockey Co-op Agreement with the WIAA. Is anybody wishing to speak to that? Who was going to do it?
Kevin was here a few minutes ago, and I don't know if he was doing the presentation or not. It is a continuation of the, I can share the...
Mr. Schloss right outside there.
It is a continuation of the...
He's here. He had the paperwork.
Of the co-op that we currently have. There's no changes, no new teams added, none dropped, and so I can share that information, but I thought somebody was going to present that information.
I don't know if it, can it be tabled, or do they need it?
I think they need it. Okay.
Oh.
We'll give him 30, Mr. Schloss, I know, had the paperwork in his hand. We'll give him 30 seconds to come back. If not, we'll move it to the, we'll move it down the action list here. Mr. Schloss, I saw you with the paperwork for the hockey co-op, and that's all right. We need an action item, an action on it tonight. So if you can just quickly
Sure.
tell us about the ice hockey co-op.
Okay, as many of you know, we are involved in a co-op for hockey with other schools in the area. We are asking that we continue in this co-op. Living Word is no longer interested in being in the co-op. However, Kewaskum will be taking their spot. For us to offer hockey in this area for our school, our community, as well as others nearby, it is necessary that we co-op. We don't have enough participation. We're requesting and asking that you approve this co-op. If you do, we can move ahead and get permission from the WIA.
I move to approve the Ice Bears, or the Ice Bears Boys Ice Hockey Co-op Agreement for WIAA.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions, discussion? All in fa-
I just have a comment. I just have to tout again the West Bend East and West programs. Hockey, I had a goddaughter that went through the co-ops program for ice hockey, and an example of all the other programs from bowling to trap shooting and all the state qualifiers, that we have a phenomenal offering of sports and extracurricular activities. So this is an example of one, and I'm in favor of it.
Great.
And you're right about that. This is, the parents really do make a big contribution to the sport to allow their children to participate. Both boys and girls participate in hockey, which is great.
Great. Any more comments, questions? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Will you need me for anything else?
Thank you. I think we're good.
Do you want to speak on anything else?
I'm done.
We'll move to the 2018-2019 audit report. Mr. Sarno.
Mr. Schlash, could you help me with the audit report, sir? Thank you for this opportunity this evening. Have it in your possession as a part of the board packet, our 2018-19 financial audit. There's our actual annual financials report, pretty thick document, 70-some page document. There's an executive summary put together by Mr. Brian Grunwald, partner on the project, and then as well a management response letter that essentially shares all the information that the district puts forth and whatnot. This was my 25th audit that I've been a part of. It's actually only about 22 years, but I've been one district to the next, so a little monumental. I'm happy to report that this is a clean audit. That's an accounting term. Prior to that, it used to be called an unqualified, which was a little awkward, but also meant clean. So I'm glad the Governmental Accounting Standards Board has kind of changed and evolved how they share this information. Brian does have a short presentation this evening. We did have some findings as a part of our audit. I'd be happy to discuss that after Brian's presentation. I am happy and very proud to report, though, that all of the findings were well underway, if not completely done, implementing changes and corrections and improvements in both process procedures and whatnot. But would you like to go for it?
Sounds good.
All right, let me bring that up for you.
All right, thank you. I'm Brian Grunewald. Thanks for having me here this evening. Before I get started, I do want to thank Andy and Julie and the rest of your team for the cooperation and assistance that we received throughout the audit process. And as part of the process, as Andy had mentioned, I know you've received the annual financial report. That does include all required financial statements, footnote disclosures, supplementary information. And again, as Andy mentioned, that is considered to be a clean, I'm going to refer to as an unmodified opinion. So that's exactly what you should hope or expect to see. Obviously, a lot of work goes into that process and moving forward. The second bullet point there really focuses on internal control. As Andy had mentioned, there are some findings in terms of how things are being done within the district. Andy and his team have been extremely proactive with trying to identify those, work through those, develop plans for moving forward. And again, there is additional detailed information within the annual financial report and some written narrative with regards to the response to the findings there as well. In terms of the single audit, that's really the federal and state financial award piece of the audit. I just wanted to give you a brief snapshot or overview of that. In terms of the state awards, includes $39.2 million of funding, and what I really wanted to do is just give you some perspective on the testing process here. From a testing perspective, we tested 2 of those programs. We certainly do not test all of the programs on an annual basis. As you can see, the 2 we tested, equalization aid represents about $30 million out of the $39.2, and then we also tested the general transportation aid. On the federal side, total funding of approximately $4.9 million. Again, you can see the 2 programs that we've tested there, the Child Nutrition Cluster as well as the Head Start program. And from a compliance perspective, again, some of those internal control type items carrying over into the federal and state awards, financial reporting for your federal and state awards, as well as that concept of segregation of duties. Again, we did go through those in detail. If anybody wants to talk about either of these findings or the previous, I'd be more than happy to do that. But again, I do feel like you're well on your way of addressing those items. I'm going through that pretty quickly. Please feel free to ask questions if you'd like me to go through anything. The next slide here, this is just a summary. The letter, the executive summary, does include, I'm going to refer to as a governance letter. It's information we are required to communicate as part of the audit process. This is just a list of bullet points of some of those key items. Again, very standardized type language from an audit perspective. If there was anything that was unusual, any types of disagreements, we'd certainly be talking about that in that letter. From my perspective, nothing that's unusual, no red flags. The one that I do want to point out is in the middle there where it references audit adjustments. All adjustments that I'm aware of have been made to your annual financial report, meaning again that they're complete and accurate in accordance with our professional standards. In addition, that letter also includes some information with regards to new standards. That's the bullet point on the bottom there where it talks about how we account for things like fiduciary activities, student activity funds, as well as leases. Those are just informational things that are coming up in the future, things that Andy and his team have started to work on already, so they've got a good head start on that. Again, just an informational type comment, but I did want to address that because it is presented in that letter. Then I just want to move into some of the financial information. So first off, just wanted to start out looking at the district's general fund balance. This gives you a snapshot of the history of the general fund reserves over the last few years. Again, keep in mind that this is your balance as of June 30th. The district does talk a lot about how much fund balance should we have, benchmarking that, targeting that in terms of where you want to be. It's extremely important from a cash flow perspective to maintain certain levels of reserves, and I'll talk more about that as we move on through some of the slides here. But I just like to look at the history. I mean, here you can see back in 2015, we were at about 15.2 million. If you carry that forward to the end of 2009, you're still at 15.2 million. So you have a little fluctuation throughout the period there. At the end of 2018, you're up to 16.2, did come down to 15.2. So you did use approximately $1 million worth of fund balance during the 18-19 fiscal year. Again, that is consistent with your budget, which called for a use of fund balance there as well. Just wanted to give you some history on that. This also shows the different components of your fund balance. There is additional information throughout the audit document if you want to dig into the different components there. The one that we always like to focus on is the unassigned category. That's the amount that hasn't been set aside for specific purposes. It's available for things like working capital and contingency reserves. And again, you do need to maintain certain levels of dollars there because of that cash flow element. You can see at the end of the year, you're at about 7.2 million in terms of that unassigned balance. And to highlight that a little bit further, this next graph just takes that fund balance and it compares it to the amount of expenditures in your budget. So again, just looking at the blue line there is focusing on just the unassigned dollars, giving you some perspective or history on that. Certainly one of the things that I always look for is, how do we calibrate that line? How much do we have, as well as the overall fluctuation. From a fluctuation standpoint, you can see a high of 11.2 back in 2018. And again, because you used a little bit of that fund balance during 2019, you're at about 9.4%. The red line there shows your total. You can see 19.6% at the end of the year. One of the discussion items that Andy and I work through is how much fund balance do we have? Where are we? How do we benchmark? Where do we want to be? So, I mean, I don't see anything here that, I guess, if you tie that back, one of the things that we talk about is, do you have short-term borrowing, and are you borrowing during the year to cover some of those cash flow items? So I should point out that you do have some cash flow borrowing throughout the year, but by the end of the year, that's all paid off. So just one thing to monitor as you work through how much of that fund balance do you have.
Question on that.
Yeah.
How do we compare as far as the percentage of fund balance compared to other school districts, maybe in Kingstown?
So I'd say the challenge with that is you have to understand the size of the district as well as other factors that go into that. Our general rule of thumb is to try to be in that 15 to 20% range. Now, when I step back and look at your overall fund balance, you have some additional dollars hanging out in that restricted category that relate to your self-insurance program. And you've also got some dollars that have been in that committed category that have stayed there for a relatively long period of time, meaning they've been set aside or earmarked. My perspective is as long as you have dollars in those other categories, that provides cash flow that you can use throughout the year. If you were to use those funds, I would probably be telling you to ratchet up your unassigned fund balance a little bit more. So overall, you're in strong shape now. You do cash flow borrow, but it's not that significant. It's for a very short period of time. That's what I would say benchmark off of. Do we need to cash flow borrow throughout the year? So overall, you're fine. But again, if you do start to use some of those committed and restricted funds, it's going to bring you down, and you're going to need to build up that unassigned category. So you're in good shape. Certainly not excessive by any means.
Maybe one follow-up question. So we're at 21%, and the lower end is 14%. That you have to stay above 14? Is that the norm? For board policy? All right, so I'm just saying we're 7 percentage points above what board policy has.
Right.
As far as the cash reserve. Would that be an accurate statement?
Right. Yep. Okay, then this next slide just gives you a snapshot of some of your other governmental funds. You can see it starts out with your debt service fund. You can see that that has increased $6.1 million at the end of 2019. And it also just gives you a snapshot of some of the other funds, the special revenue funds, Fund 50, Fund 80. I do want to point out that that unassigned deficit labeled as donations, that is your Fund 21. That's just really due to timing in terms of when you are receiving payments from the foundation. So that was planned. You can see that the amount of that deficit has decreased significantly in recent years. Back to 2017, you were at $570,000. So that has been paid off again as the foundation continues to make payments. And then the last category there, the capital projects funds. I do want to point out that does include all of your capital projects funds, including your Fund 46. So there you can see resources at the end of the year of about $2.9 million. Then in addition to fund balance, I also just wanted to give you a snapshot of your long-term debt. So this again just shows you the outstanding balances. Keep in mind it's as of the end of the year. It just shows you the balances and change over time. Back at 2016, you had about $44.5 million. You've continued to pay down principal. At the end of 2018, you had $35.4 million. During the current fiscal school year, 18-19, you did repay approximately $1.9 million, leaving you with $33.5 million in total between your general obligation notes and bonds at the end of the year. So just wanted to give you some perspective on that. And again, that's in accordance with the agreements that you have, the amortization schedules that you have in place. This is just the principal component of that, yes. And then I also just wanted to step back financially just to give you some information with regards to the post-employment benefits. From an audit process, you are required to engage an actuary to value those benefits. That's the first bullet point. Based on that most recent actuarial study, a liability of $11.8 million. You have established and utilized the Fund 73 to help set aside resources for that. As of the end of the year, you had approximately $2.8 million of funds in there, leaving you with a net liability of approximately $9 million. So just wanted to give you some perspective on that. And that overall net liability is fairly consistent with what it was as of the end of the previous year. Okay, that's all the comments that I had prepared for you. If anyone has any questions, I'd certainly be more than happy to try to answer those.
When do we go through this process again, Brian?
It's for your junior end. What we'll do is we'll work with Andy and target some dates during June to come out for what we refer to as our interim visit. We'll start following up on some of those findings, looking at processes and procedures. Then we'll come back probably in the August timeframe and start working through verifying some of the final numbers.
Any more questions? Thank you for being here tonight. I don't know where you live, but I assume it's probably not in West Bend based on your phone number there. So thanks for being here and presenting that. Andy, any more follow-up from you?
No,
I was very happy with my team. We had some staffing turnover. I joined the year mid-stride last year. My team really dug in. They did a great job. Brian and his team they deserve an applaud as well. They got the job done. We had some obstacles this last year, but I was very impressed with the work that Clifton Larson Allen and particularly Brian and his team completed. So thank you much.
Andy, I do have a question regarding the findings and the points of remediation. What's our plan there?
Yeah, so I would like to point out, and when I indicated, and I probably omitted 2 words when I shared everything is being corrected. Things that are within our ability to correct. So 2 of the things that are on there are, number 1, completing all of the financial documents that Brian and his team have put together. We don't have a staff member. Not many districts have staff members. There's probably a handful of districts that actually prepare their full financial statements across the state.
I would
a
say,
couple.
I would say very few when you're talking much larger school districts, and it's again a very small number.
Yeah.
I work with 11 districts. None of them prepare their own.
Yeah.
Typically, where I see it, it's at larger entities like technical colleges and counties that are preparing their own, but they've got more staff on hand.
I had 2 CPAs on staff in Green Bay, again, 23,000 students. We didn't prepare our financial statements. The same comment was on that audit. So that one, we don't have the ability unless we really focus and add some staff and whatnot. The second piece is, again, related to staffing, is that segregation of duties. So we're doing what we can in order to make sure that we limit or minimize exposure to risk, make sure that there isn't fraudulent activities. We didn't see anything like that. You guys particularly look at a couple, that's why you do those deep dives into programs. We look at our cash handling and whatnot. So there are some things that we have our hands tied a little bit with some limitations, but particularly we're doing our financial claims with our grants on a much more timely, a monthly basis. We're doing a lot of those types of things that just with some consistent staff that we are aware of it now. And that's how I like to view an audit. Is it's not to catch us doing something bad, it's really to make sure that we're doing it right in the future. So that's what we've done. So if you'd like to have some additional discussion about that, I'd be more than happy to.
Maybe
Thank you.
just to elaborate on the segregation of duties comment, part of the reason that we've have that in there is we certainly try to be proactive with working with Andy and his team about what are they doing, how are they doing it, are they being as effective as possible with the resources that you have. I would say that the turnover creates more challenges with that because in general you have some limited staffing available and then you have a couple people that leave in positions that are vacant. It puts even more stress or pressure on that system. So you are doing things the right way, you are being proactive, and we'll certainly look at that as we move forward as well.
So just to set expectations for the future, the item, and I understand why it needs to be in here, but it looks like we're getting dinged, so to speak, for using your CPA firm to prepare financial statements, which is ironic, but I understand why technically it needs to be in there. But my point is, just for the board's expectation, is there any reason why we wouldn't expect the same finding to be in the statement next year?
That's exactly the comment is that financial statement preparation, and just to elaborate on that, we do sit down, there's a standard reporting process, the district reports to the DPI, we report to the DPI, so we know that our numbers agree. I think what we're really referring to is the preparation of the document. We sit down and talk about the draft before it's issued. I would expect to see it in the future, but again, it's probably more of a convenience for us to prepare that document than to have staff on hand to do that, particularly when there's things like some of those new standards that are coming up.
No, I don't disagree. I think it's just that we shouldn't be surprised if, as a technicality, that needs to show up on next year's report too.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move on with a motion here, I got so excited with our recognitions at the beginning. We should have appointed a clerk, and before we go through too many action items here, anything that needs to be signed by a clerk, we should have an acting clerk. So, Mr. Fisher, would you be our acting clerk tonight?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Any more questions on the audit? I move to accept the June 30th, 2019 audited financials as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further questions, comments, discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Andy and Brian, for being here. Yeah, government students, if you guys want to get out of here, Mr. Rebholz can sign your papers, and thank you all for coming. You don't have to stay all the way to the end, but thanks for being here tonight. And we'll move on to our ninth grade science books.
Good evening. Last week, we shared in the curriculum update the information about the biology textbook resources. You've had some additional time to review the information provided. And I wanted to first see if there are any questions with regard to the resource. Robert Mulbauer is here, and so is Kevin Hyde. And both of them were in a, very much part of the process.
So I do have a number of questions, in part because I wasn't here last week. I did watch the recorded session, and thank you, Robert, for your input and involvement, and Kevin as well. But obviously, in the last week, there's been some things on social media and so forth about this, so I just want to get inside this a little bit more. How many non-school district personnel or people participated in the actual review meetings?
5.
5, okay. In a community of this size, does that concern you, that it wasn't more well represented?
I've worked in larger communities and smaller communities, and this is very typical of the amount of response I've had over my career in inviting community out to something like this.
Okay. And with respect to the content that's in the book, thinking about, I'll say emerging, maybe not quite so emerging anymore, but current controversial topics like, let's pick on climate change. Is it possible, feasible to find a credible science textbook these days that would not address an issue like that?
I do not believe that it would be possible to find a textbook that would not address that. One of the things that we have to keep in mind is our standards are what drive our instruction. And so the biology textbook resource, the teachers may not use every part of it, but it will be their primary resource. So I should have stated that at the beginning. The standards will drive what sections they're actually using. It's a great resource. It has a wealth of opportunity for assessment. But just to specifically answer your question, no, all of them that we looked at.
It's out there everywhere. Okay. On the issue of standards then, do the Wisconsin standards require teaching a topic like climate change?
Yes, it is in the standards. Which standards are aligned to which courses, that's different.
Okay. So on a topic like this, as we have had previous conversations on similar but different topics like this, we acknowledge, and our policy acknowledges, that we live in a pluralistic society. We need to be open-minded in presenting these topics. On an issue like climate change, I personally am not a denier. I'm not fully embracing it. I think it's reasonable to state that we're seeing reduction in the ice caps. We're seeing an increase in average global temperature. Those are factual components that we can present to the students and agree that things are happening. Where the science comes in is the debate around what's driving that. Is this a man-made issue? Is this a natural phenomenon within the global environment changing on its own? Is that how it would be presented in the classroom? Or is it much more, this is either the book or the instructor, because the book, as you said, is only part of the experience. The majority of the experience is how the educator presents the material and fosters the dialogue and the critical thinking traits that we want to increase in our students, correct?
Correct. If you keep in mind that we also have information and technology standards that are kind of embedded throughout our curriculum, and some of those are inclusive of the students being able to sort between credible sources and non-credible sources, to research a topic and make a claim and support that claim.
Mm-hmm.
And so when teachers are presenting a topic such as this, an acknowledgement statement that there are multiple viewpoints out there, and acknowledging that is important, and we're going to look at it at this perspective. or we're going to look at, like, as you had described, these are the facts around the ice caps. There's evidence that the ice caps are melting and this. And then get into theories and hypotheses about what's causing that change. That could be something the students investigate. It kind of depends on the, what is the outcome of that particular course of study that's desired.
Okay, but it's a wide swath, and we want to foster that debate and cite different sources and do your research.
And a debate such as the one you're describing might come from different courses.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Looking through our policies, and maybe the outcome from this answer is a change in policy, but I couldn't find that our policy states a requirement for any formal public review of any curriculum selection. Did I miss something, or is that true?
If that's correct, it's not stated in our policy that it requires that at all. However, the policy 361 is up for renew this year. In fact, that's tentatively scheduled to be on the policy committee agenda for March 23rd. However, we've bumped back some policies too from the previous policy meeting to March 23rd, and we haven't come around how much time we can take for that committee meeting yet. But policy 361, which talks about material selection, is up for review in the next couple of policy meetings if it gets bumped from the 23rd.
Okay.
Sorry, real quick on that same one. Can you tell me the last time that policy was reviewed or renewed?
Yes, I can. Hold on.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Oh, I brought it with me.
I got 361-1 here is March of 17, and I think 361 is about the same time frame.
And what you're saying is that you followed these policies when going through this process of selecting this book. You're implying that maybe that policy could be changed down the road, but the current policy was followed.
Yep, and 320 of, 2017 is when it was last reviewed. And I'm sorry, that would be the, and the AR was last revised in 2012.
So my last question to Mrs. Geenan's request, is it feasible for us to table a decision for, say, 2 to 3 weeks and either host, formally publicized through the Daily News, a couple of evening sessions, or maybe have the materials available at the public library or something like that with some feedback? Because I don't believe there's anything that we do want to hide in this whole process, but in the spirit of transparency, could we do that, or are we in a position where we need to take action because of printing times and the time frame in order to get this in hand by next school year?
Well, we would like to do professional development on it in June at our, we have some days at the end of June right now that are dedicated for professional, their professional days. And the idea would be that we'd be using the resource for professional development in June. And I think every teacher on the team requested that.
Yeah, because it's definitely a change. It's an update,
Mhm.
15-year update from what we did before.
So if we'd have approval by the end of March, does that pinch that timeline at all, or?
It makes it so that if we could approve it at the March 23rd, we could potentially hold the professional development, the individuals that would provide that, potentially they would hold for us the date, but I can't guarantee that.
Okay, so I'm sorry, but.
I'm going to say capacity-wise, if you don't mind, the capacity-wise for the, we have not, future forward, I would absolutely be willing to look into the partnership with the public library for things like that. We don't have that established right now.
So a couple things, just to be very clear. We did not break any rules. There are no rules out there that state that we are required to do that. In fact, it would appear to me as if you went above and beyond to accommodate different schedules of different people to attend. 5 people attended. I understand that there are people who are trying to drop kids off, et cetera, in the morning, as Ms. Geenan pointed out. But people who are very concerned could make adjustments. It was 6:45 in the morning, correct?
6:30.
6:30 in the morning. So, I mean, unless you have some type of, job in a factory, most people are not starting until a smidge later, so they could have popped in to give you those comments. I also received no comments via email from any parent who was upset in any way, shape, or form about this. So this would tell me that the 5 people who attended are potentially the only people who have a strong statement to make about it, correct?
Potentially.
How many people reached out to you to say, hey, Laura Jackson, I can't make it to one of those meetings. Can we do another date or time? How many people reached out?
Kevin was the one listed in the letter, and 2 reached out directly, and then following those 2 who initially contacted him, 1 more reached out, or?
I communicated with just 2 people, and then they brought the other 3.
And did we receive the feedback from those 2 individuals who couldn't make it to one of those 2 sessions?
You received all of the feedback that pertained to the biology
Sure.
resource. There was other feedback given for the district.
And that was last week or 2 weeks ago?
That you received it?
No,
or
that you had that session.
February 6th,
February 6th.
correct,
February 6th?
correct.
Well, it's March 9th. And we haven't had action on this yet. Has anyone else called?
Not,
I move to approve New Dimension High School biology text as the primary resource for biology.
Second.
Any more comments, questions on the motion? All in favor?
I'll just add one more comment. I'm in favor of the recommendations of our curriculum committee and our teachers that were on the program. Our science curriculum, as I said, last board meeting or our committee meeting has been exemplary. We have outstanding teachers in this district, and our science teachers stand up to anyone in the state, in the country. I have personal experience in having 2 kids go through the science programs, and it's fair, it's balanced, there's no personal agendas from what I've seen, and actually being a customer on the other side. So I commend our science teachers for their work in this community, and that's why I'm voting in favor of it.
Thank you, Mr. Repholz. Any more questions, comments, discussion? There's a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the approval or recommendation for approval of a middle school course revision.
So you had, at our last committee of the whole, we also talked about a middle school course revision for the world language curriculum. This would have our students who are starting world languages in 5th and 6th grade continue in 7th grade on a day 1, day 2 schedule, so alternating days. And that those 3, over the course of those 3 years, it would be the equivalent of Spanish 1 at the high school, or German 1, or French 1. And then in the 8th grade year, it would be an everyday course. That would be the equivalent of Spanish, or German, or French 2. It would also be more equitable as with the amount of times that the students receive instruction from their instructor, and the amount of opportunities for the instructors to really work to have the students going through that novice level, and a number of credits that students could high school credits that students could potentially earn in middle school remains the same. Are there any questions?
I have a question. If the student's doing Spanish, 5th, 6th, they get to Badger, finish Spanish 1 in 7th grade, do they have an opportunity to, let's say, take French 1 in 8th grade?
Currently, they do not, and the entry point, they would be with 7th grade students, and it's not the full French 1, but it would be the language immersion and the last part of that.
Okay.
So their best entry point is, currently we don't have a good entry point. Right now, someone coming in at Badger, the best entry point, this would provide a better entry point for them, with allowing the teachers opportunity to differentiate. And I have some of our world language teachers are here, including our middle school world language as well.
Laura, can they take French 1 as a freshman?
Yes, they
They
can.
could. So they wouldn't,
changing
they just start, they could
languages,
switch gears as a freshman, do Spanish all the way through, and then as a freshman decided they wanted to take French 1, or German 1, or Spanish 1.
Yes, and part of the original intent was this long sequence to really become proficient with the language and to have 2 years in before you, if you were choosing to make a switch, really allows you to have a solid base.
I move to approve the course changes for the world language studies at the middle school level.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions, comments, discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, out-of-state, out-of-country field trips. We touched on this a little earlier, but it looks like you need a motion on it, so.
So we are certainly at a time when our global conditions and our national conditions are changing and evolving. As Mr. Kierkegaard stated, for trips that are planned the rest of the year, with the exception of 2 of them on your list that are competition trips, all of the ones for the 1920 school year have been approved. We are I'm asking that we table the band trip that's listed on the list and approve the Winter Guard trips that are still scheduled for this school year. Those are competition-based trips. And then the remainder of the trips are for the 2020-2021 school year. The teachers and administrators have met on them on a number of occasions. They have met all of the conditions within the AR. Certain things are a little, like with the trip to Skokie, Illinois, we want to see the school calendar at that point to pick the exact day, but that's a one-day trip to Illinois. And, but the remainder are for the 2021 school year. As with the board may recall, and I apologize, Paul and Aaron, you were not on the board at the time, but a few years back there was a volcanic eruption that made us really sit down and go, can we send our students to Guatemala? And we spent some time really going through and looking at could we send them. So with all of our trips, we have procedures and processes in place to review that on a schedule. And so the initial approval is for the board to give the permission to go ahead, and then we would continue forward. Obviously, if their situation warrants a further discussion, we would do so.
So just a quick comment. As we're reviewing this, and I'm assuming this is a policy in an AR situation, but I really think we should split these two for future. I mean, when it's a competition, there are multiple competitions that require out-of-state travel. I don't feel that that is the same as a trip per se to like Germany for the German students. So I'd like to see us look at that differently for, I assume that's policy and an administrative rule. But just real quick on these trips for Color Guard, this is a really good program. So this is 5th through 8th grade, and then I believe it's like 8th through high school. And many of the students are involved in Color Guard potentially wouldn't participate in another sport or another opportunity. And unfortunately, the Color Guard circuit is very strong in Illinois, not in Wisconsin. But we have really performed really well. I believe we've been national champions.
Been up here to be recognized by the board in the past.
So, you know, it's a great program, and it really gets a lot of kids involved. So I would really like to see it split in the future, because I do think a competition is much different than a trip. And I know that it's not just Color Guard that goes out of state to compete.
And in the next month, there are some other things being worked on. So next month, there are 2, Winter Guard would be 1 for the 2021 school year, and potentially another sport would be coming forward at the next meeting.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, I think when they come forward, they obviously don't know next year's schedule yet. So I mean, they're almost just saying it's a competition in March and we compete 3 times or whatever it is, because they're not going to know the dates or even the potential for sure location at that point. Okay. So with that being said, I move to approve the country out-of-state field trips for 2020 and 2021 school year, except for the band trip that we are removing from this discussion. Correct?
Yeah, but the Winter Guard is the 2019-20 school year. So.
Oh, okay, so I'm sorry, that's not the way this motion reads. So I move to approve the out-of-state travel for the 2019-2020 school year. And I also move for the 2020 and 2021 school year. There we go.
Okay, so motion and a second. I just want to make sure we have the motion correct. So does this include the band?
No, she pulled that one. Like I stated it, Nancy
The band trip to
restated it.
Italy?
The band trip period that's
Period.
listed on the form.
And if June rolls around and the band wants to go to Hawaii, is a potential idea?
With it being such an evolving situation,
Okay.
if we were going to move forward with a band trip, we have the next, the April board meeting to come forward with you yet,
Okay.
for you, for approval.
Are band students, if we cancel the trip altogether, are they able to get a refund?
So we're working on all of the detail behind that right now, so I don't want to guarantee, make a promise
Sure.
guaranteeing.
And that's through a travel agency, correct?
But here's I just have a comment on, again, maybe I'm treating the students and their parents chose to go on this band trip. They may or may not have read all the fine print of them signing up for it. My 2 cents on this is, if at all possible, if we can guarantee them a refund, it's out of their hands. Again, I view them as their customers of the school district that signed up for this special event. I know we're getting questions on that. That I would, one, strongly encourage the travel agent to give us a refund, or we might not do business with them again, or have the school district as a last resort back up and refund the money for the students as well. That's just my personal opinion, and I would like to just state that, so.
We're very hopeful that we're going to get a refund. They've done a great job of working with us so far, and so we're very hopeful. But you have to also remember that this is just one of 3 proposed international trips, and so if the board chooses to say we're going to do a refund for the band trip, is that also true for the Germany trip this summer?
Or the
Is that
Peru
also
trip.
true for the
Peru.
South America trip for this? I mean, so there's a variety, and I agree with you, Kurt. I think that we need to make sure that we keep people whole as much as possible, but it's not just the band trip. There's a variety of trips that will take place between now and the time school starts next fall, and that's part of what our discussion's going to be Wednesday morning before school, as Wednesday after, as well as after school. What are the plans that you have in place in case it goes from bad to worse, in case there is no travel recommended for even a trip to California or a trip to, how do we make those things happen as well?
Certainly not a fun decision that we have to make in the district, but at times we do.
So the trip to Naperville on March 15th and then Indiana on March 28th,
Color guard competition.
that's a competition in a week and a half, 2 weeks?
Correct.
And obviously, you'll be monitoring the situation in Naperville and LaPorte, Indiana, and if there's a outbreak, even though we approved the trip, you still reserve the right as superintendent to say, we aren't sending our kids?
That's correct. And so we'll keep you posted. That's part of what that discussion on Wednesday is going to be all about, is that even though we're scheduled, and maybe our spring baseball might be going someplace, I don't know if they are or not, or softball typically goes someplace, and there's no guarantees that we can go this spring, because it might be right into the heart of a breakout, and so we can't do that, and we'll have to play that event by event and go from there.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on the floor. And just to recap the motion, it is for the 1920 and 2021 field trips listed on the sheet minus the band trip. And why not just approve the band trip and keep it on the table, so to speak, and continue to monitor the situation up until that point?
I believe we just need a little more detail.
Okay.
And we should provide
That one's a little unique because you've already changed the destination. Okay.
We believe the best way for us to get a full refund is to give them action or a recommendation real soon.
Good
And so
point.
that we think the quicker we let them know that there's a possibility we don't want to go at all, the better the chances are of us getting a full refund.
Okay. Any more comments, questions? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? None? Motion carries. All right. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our Head Start grant self-assessment.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Emily Melstrand. I'm the principal of early learning for the West Bend School District, and I'm here tonight with Matt Durant. He's the Head Start coordinator. We are here to present to you the Head Start Community and Self-Assessment. This is an annual process, and it's intended to drive the development of our Head Start strategic plan and also the development of our annual Head Start continuation grant application. So as you know, I'm new to the role as the Washington County Head Start Director, and Matt has been gracious enough to kind of mentor me through this process this year. So he has really led out the self-assessment. I've been learning along the way, so he's going to present that information to you, and then if you have any questions for us, we'll tag team on our responses.
All right, thank you again for having me here tonight. So as Emily said, we're here to talk about the community and self-assessment. So as far as the process, we did it the same way that we did last year. So Head Start views the community assessment and the self-assessment as two separate things. We push them out together because we feel like they kind of feed into each other. The community assessment is all the needs of Washington County. So we use a lot of census data to look at just number of people in different categories. So the first third of that presentation that we push out is really just what's going on in the county. The second 2/3 of it is really what's going on in our program. So we have lots of data attached to the link, and you can look at that if you like. But it shows really what's going on in our program and all the needs. The reason why we do this is to really look at how the community's needs are shifting and how we can support them, and then just kind of how do we maximize our resources in our program. So this is what we've targeted for the last 2 years. So if you look at the yellow bar, we did a self-assessment. The self-assessment team that year said, hey, we need to look at our dental. So we've partnered with Bridging Brighter Smiles. It's a company that comes to you. They bill Badger Care directly. They bring a dental chair in. We set it up in our loading dock, sorry. But if you're a 3-year-old, that really doesn't matter. So as you can see, the 2 years that after we've targeted it, we've seen kind of that line sort of taper off where it should be. If you look at the purple bar, our most recent set of data, that actually accounts for every kid in the program minus the few kids that were missing that day or absent. So we've really done a good job targeting that. And then that's where we're looking to what's our next goal. So we pushed out the survey, and this is just a representation of who responded to our survey. And some of the strengths that they came up with, they really like our program options. So we feel like that's a good thing. Our 3- and 4-year-old, the way that we have things structured is good. We have really targeted our English language learners in the community. So we've targeted them both as students and as families. So we've partnered with places like CASA, who have helped us identify those families that are in need of some of our support and services. And then we've partnered with our early childhood. It's fantastic being in the same building so that we can service kids both on the Head Start side and on the special education side. So these are some of our areas of focus. The first one's kind of unique because transportation, being a county-based program, even though our grantee is the West Bend School District, they're going to ask for options outside of West Bend, that we think of West Bend. So we currently transport kids that are kind of within our same school district boundary. We have one unique transportation option that goes from a centralized location in Hartford, and then it brings kids to Jackson Community Center where we serve them. But there's options in the county where there is no transportation to any one of our programs. So that is an area where the community and self-assessment identified as a need. The next 2 bullet points are talking about food, and you'll see that on the next slide when we get there. We're really trying to target some of our food choice options. So we've already been working with UW Extension to do some healthy eating type classes, and we want to partner with Amy in our school district to make sure that we're providing the best foods for our kids. And then we really want to continue to strengthen our partnerships in the community. Part of that is because we want to bring volunteers in the program. Many of you have been to Ralph's and hung out with some of our 3 and 4-year-olds, so I thank you for that. And then finally, the clientele that we serve, many of them have experienced trauma. So many of them are homeless or in foster care, and there's a lot of trauma that goes around with that, so we still want to continue to make that part of our goals, that we strengthen that in our building. So this is the data that was most concerning to a lot of the people that went through our self-assessment process. So I'm really looking at the bottom 2 bars, the overweight and the obese. The purple line is our current year, so you can see spikes in both of those areas. And our healthy weight has gone down. So it's not something necessarily that we have full control over, but it's part of that parent and child education that we can support at our center, and we're going to do that.
I have one comment to add to that. When Matt and I reviewed this and this kind of popped up as an area of concern, obviously it's something we wanted to be thoughtful about. And for me, this really reinforced some of the work that we're doing as an early learning team around nature-based play and instruction and having kids outdoors and moving and active. The other thing that we've really been thinking more about is the benefit of some of our partnerships. You know, we partner with the YMCA, and we have 20 of our students who are Head Start participating in programming there. And those kids have access to swimming lessons, a sports class, and then a science and cooking class. And all of those things really tied into this piece of data where we really kind of reinforce the need for those healthy practices.
So then what's next for us? So Emily's done a fantastic job at looking at early learning as an entire umbrella and not just a bunch of different unique programs. So it's really bringing it all together at this point, and how do we create our strategic plan in a way that can service all of the needs that we see in our self-assessment, and then those needs get built into the grant that we are going to be updating very shortly for Head Start, and you will be hearing about that in April. Any questions for us?
A question more for, I guess, Don, since Dave isn't here. But you made an interesting comment with Head Start and early learning being co-located. As we talk about facilities reallocation, is that, the plan is to keep them together?
That is correct, and we have had, and Emily and Matt can address it as well, we went over to Silverbrook about a month ago. Our plan still is that for the 2021-22 school year, we will move the Rolf's program over to Silverbrook. We think we'll have the space there, not only for short-term, but for long-term. I believe that's a great move. I know that when we went over and looked at it, everybody was impressed, and Emily and or Matt, you can take it from there.
Yeah, so just to clarify, when I use the term early learning, I'm really using that term to describe or to include our 4K, which is a community-based program, early childhood special education, which is, I think, what you might be referencing, Paul, and then our Head Start program. So currently, Head Start is located at the Ralph's Education Center, and we also have some of our early childhood special education services being provided in that building, but those are also available to children out at our community sites. So yes, as we're looking at kind of a facilities plan moving forward, we are thinking about our Head Start program and then those early childhood special education services that are currently provided at the Ralph's Education Center. And Don's correct. I mean, there's tons of wonderful opportunities for us at the Silverbrook campus if that's where we choose to consider moving the Ralph's programs, and connected to that healthy weight, just the ability to have access to a gym and to have access to green space outside for kids to be playing and moving would be phenomenal. So our team was super excited about that possibility.
I move to approve the 2019-2020 Head Start Community Self-Assessment Board Report.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more questions, comments, discussion on this? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
very much. All right, our next topic tonight is potential action to schedule a board work session on March 16th at 5:30, and the purpose of this would be for facilities discussion. So because we have a regular board meeting tonight and we are all here, I just lowered my chair. We could put this on our action item list tonight to actually schedule and formally schedule that meeting. Mr. Krukgard, any comments on the purpose of the meeting other than facilities?
5:30, and we're going to spend a couple hours talking about facility needs, and Andy will, I believe Dave is going to be gone that night, but Andy and I will be leading out the discussion. We'll go from there.
And we will have no action items that night?
There'll be no action, strictly, and it will not even be a committee of the whole concept. We'll set up the rectangle table concept so that we can, it really will be a work session more so than a committee of the whole session.
Okay. I move to approve the board work session for Monday, March 16th at 5:30 PM right here in this room.
Second.
Any comments, questions, discussion on that? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So we just scheduled ourselves for next week, 5:30. We'll see you here. Laura Jackson coming up for some second readings on revised board policies.
So it's listed as an action item, but we cannot take action on the second reading in item H tonight. And, but I would entertain, are there any additional questions on the policies that were brought forward from the first reading?
We can't take action on second readings if we don't have the full board here. And so this will serve as our second reading on these policies. We can certainly discuss them, just can't vote on them. Seeing none, we will put this on our next regular board meeting for a third reading, and if the full board is not here at a third reading, you can vote on policy during a third reading, so. Okay,
So Board Policy 151 does allow you for the second reading of the deletion to take action on it, even if the full board is not present. The deletion would be effective if a majority of the board present votes to delete the policy. So for item I, which is the second reading of the deletion of Board Policy 345.4B, retention, are there any questions about that?
I move to approve the deletion of Board Policy 345.4B, retention.
okay, motion and a second on the deletion of this policy. Any questions, comments, discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Great, thank you. Our discussion tonight starts with some more policy. I'll let you take it away.
All right, so we had our most recent policy committee meeting. We discussed the policies listed for first reading. With these first readings, most of the changes, if not all of them, were directly from the WASB recommended policies, and bringing it up to date. Also, making sure that we had all of the necessary language in the policies. Some of them, with regard to commencement, some of the items in our current policy would be part of the administrative rule or part of the practice of the high schools. It's not something the board needs to attend to, but it's something that high school administration needs to attend to.
So I have a question in regards to early graduation, 345.61. And maybe this is addressed elsewhere, but, and maybe the right wording isn't citizenship, but it seems to me as if the prior policy said, you know, if we have students who are truant, tardy, have a lot of behavioral issues, we're not going to allow them to graduate early. So did we remove that now?
Correct. So if you're a student who has earned all of your credits and has met our graduation requirements, there are other policies in place that have consequences for truancy for all students. and consequences for citizenship for all students.
But I mean, to me, early graduation, I would think for many, thinking back to my high school days, would have been a great option, and getting out is kind of a, yay, you made it. I'm just concerned that we're rewarding people who can't follow rules. So, I mean, if we have a truancy or a tardy detention, suspension, that type of thing, I mean, why would we reward them with the opportunity to graduate early if they can't follow policies and rules and behave properly?
Well, and I was going to, bullet, or item 3 in that policy talks about how the school counselor will review the request and send the request and recommendation to permit or not permit to the superintendent. And I think in
The principal sends it on.
the,
The school counselor will review it with the principal and forward that on.
okay,
So you're right, the counselor could still forward it on.
we probably need to add principal in there.
Under item 3,
Yeah.
and post-graduation plans with the principal.
Oh, okay,
Forward.
it's for the principals at the end. So, but in item 2, I mean, it talks about tardiness, truancy, detentions. Could that still be a factor in the recommendation?
Question, and then the recommendation, yes.
Yeah, but I don't like the idea that it's not in there for the world to see that. I mean, you know, what I think, we have people who constantly want to bend the rules and who constantly want to try and circumvent the process, right? So if we don't spell it out to say clearly, you need to be in compliance with, you know, your tardiness, detention, suspensions, et cetera, as this states. I mean, maybe there's a better way to word it, but I am not in favor of deleting it totally. I feel like that needs to be out there for people to understand. We're not here to reward bad behavior. You know, we're here to help you, you know, advance your after high school decisions, whether that's, you know, job or college or whatever that might be for you. But I don't think we're here to help people not follow the rules. So I have a problem with that portion being deleted. I feel like that needs to be spelled out
I wonder if
clearly.
that can be added into bullet point 3, which talks about the request, and then maybe you talk about truancy, tardiness, detentions, conduct, et cetera, will be a considering factor of the committee, or I don't know how you'd word it.
I
but
think,
you could almost combine, put 2 at the end of 3 or something.
So part of the question you have to ask yourself is, early graduation a honor, or is it a
Right.
certificate of completion? And so if it is a certificate of completion, we have some students who truly despise school. They have had the opportunity to get their credits either at the end of their junior year, typically it's halfway through their senior year, okay? And so they're not asking for the honor recognition of having a quote-unquote early graduation. They're asking for a certificate of completion, which in this case is a diploma, okay? We don't have a special awards program for them, but they truly are just not fitting as well into the school setting as they would like, and they truly want to be done. In other cases, it's kids who want to go off to college early, they want to do other things, and so as you look at that concept, to put in those other factors, then we're saying that early graduation is more of a reward as opposed to a certificate of completion. And I'm not saying either way is right or wrong. Typically, if it would come to me and I had to sign off, I'm looking at, have they met the criteria as set forth by the West Bend Board of Education? Do they have the state criteria? And if they have, then I'm signing the certificate. I'm not looking to see if they had 7 days or 17 days absent. If they had 17 days absent, and then potentially they're not going to get the credits that they need to be successful, but it's not so much a honor as it is a certificate of completion when it comes over to me.
Well, I can appreciate that, but don't you think having something that states you must do these things and you must follow our rules, whether you don't want to be here or you do, regardless of that, I mean, if we don't put something out there to say, hey, you have to follow these rules, And then we'll, you know, whether, if they hate school, I would think they'd want to follow the rules all the more to get out of here as fast as possible. But if you can't follow our rules, I mean, that's still a reward to them. If they hate school, and in the end, they're like, I want to leave, I want to move on to my next whatever it is, that still is a reward to them, whether they walk across the stage or not. I'm sorry, I have a problem if we don't have something in there about you need to still follow the rules. I mean, you could literally barely show up and, you know, say, gee, I hate school, I want to get out, not have to follow any rules and be disrespectful, et cetera, and we're going to say, oh, that's okay, we'll just graduate you anyways. No.
But we're not going to graduate anybody unless they have made the required completion
Right,
of
but
their
they could
credits.
still be disrespectful and have had suspensions and other conduct issues and still pass a course. I mean, that doesn't, you could be a total disrespectful person and still get an A on a test.
Ultimately, if a student has the opportunity to graduate early and they want their certificate, some of our students are working. Some of them, I will say in my past experience, a situation like that where the student just wasn't going to attend and the certificate wasn't personally valuable to them at that point in their life, they may have shown up as a dropout. And this gives all students an opportunity, regardless of your attendance history. If you were able to pass all of our classes, so much so that you've met all of the requirements set forth in the graduation policy, you have the right to ask for early graduation. And at times, attendance is due to family factors, work factors that result from a family factor, and we're punishing a child for a life circumstance that they don't really control.
Well, but a detention and a suspension and general conduct wouldn't be anything but the child misbehaving or not following rules. So this is my point. I mean, we can argue all day about the truancy and the tardiness. I mean, my problem here is the general behavior and conduct. I mean, we shouldn't be rewarding people for bad behavior. I'm sorry, but as a mom, you will never convince me that that's a good plan. You know, you need to reward people for good behavior, and we need to hold our expectations high. So I really am not going to vote for this policy any way, shape, or form if we do not somehow include something in there about our students being good citizens. Call it whatever you'd like, I don't care, but we need to have our students following rules and being respectful and having proper conduct in school. And I don't agree with rewarding people for not doing those things.
I would say I'd rather take it back to the policy committee as a whole to discuss again, and then bring it back to the board for further clarification.
Fair.
And so that one is 345.61, early graduation. Why don't we
Yep.
plan on bringing that back to policy? And more discussion on that one. Certainly appreciate your comments.
Laura, regarding 352.1 extended trips, I got my English teacher hat on and got my red pen out on a couple of wordy things. In the new paragraph 2, first sentence, the Board of Education has the authority to approve such trips on, period. I think we need to strike on.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
And then moving down to, let's see, where is it? It's going to come under ethical considerations, I believe is where it is. District employees. What am I looking at? Or maybe I'm on a different one. I thought this was the same one. My apologies. I will go back and take a look at what the second page is from.
Is it potentially from 352 itself?
Now, this is where it would be helpful if we had in the footer the actual policy that a stray page pertains to. Limit the disruption of ongoing educational program to a minimum. Yeah, hey, you know, do as I say, not as I do.
That
is 352.
Right.
352.
And if it's just a word, we can make that change without bringing it back
That's correct, yep.
to a policy,
Yeah.
if that becomes an issue.
So 352, on the top of page 2, the principal has the authority to approve field trip request. I'm thinking that should be requests plural, and then in the next line, field trip request must be made 20 school days. I think that should be, again, plural. Just nitpicky stuff.
That's all right.
Thank you.
If it's all right, we'll keep those coming back next week for second reading. I think that's just grammar changes. Any other comments on these? If not, that's our first reading on those. We'll send the 345.61 back to policy, and we'll bring the other ones along for second reading at our next board meeting. Then we'll move on to a discussion of deletion of board policy 351 and 353.2, summer school and instructional methods.
So as we had, at policy committee, we discussed that the summer school policy is one that is kind of just part of our doing business, that we did research. WASB doesn't have a recommended policy on it. Some of the neighboring districts do. They tend to be Neola districts, and those policies state that essentially that the district may have a summer school program, and that the administration will bring that forward. It is part of how we do business in West Bend, and so I don't believe that a policy is necessary on that, and I believe that we reached consensus on that during the policy committee.
Yeah, if you open up this policy, I remember looking at this one with Chris during policy, you know, it's 14 years old and it's 3 sentences long. That doesn't really say anything anyway. So we have a very robust summer school program that is, like you say, part of doing business. So this was recommended for deletion.
Same thing with the instructional materials policy, which is 353.2.
But this one's only 2 sentences long.
and it really references having a guest speaker in the classroom.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing on this one.
So both of these would come back for second reading at the next regular board meeting.
Great. Any other questions on those? Thank you very much. We'll move along to our teacher compensation model update. You're sitting behind the pole tonight. I didn't see you. I'm glad you're here.
I'm here. All right. So first, kind of give an overview of kind of a general timeline that we're looking at, unless the board decides otherwise. Then I'll kind of give an overview of what we're going to talk about this evening. So what we're doing tonight really is an introduction to the compensation model document, which is provided in board docs. Before English teacher Paul gets me, I found a couple typos on Friday night, so it was updated this morning with a couple typos corrected. So looking at introducing tonight, answering brief discussion, inquiry around that sort of area, and then on the 23rd at the committee of the whole, we're looking at allotting a large chunk of time once you've had the chance to really dig in and really get into the questions and things like that. And then if, you know, per board's direction they're going at that point, then April 13th we would propose for approval. So that's kind of the timeline we're looking at. What I'm going to cover tonight and then answer questions as we can. First, talk about kind of the purpose behind the compensation model, a little bit of the background why, because based on a little bit of community input afterwards when we had our last discussion, I thought it'd be beneficial. Then we'll get into the meat of the model and go from there. So, you know, there's really 5 purposes, and they are in the document behind a compensation model. To attract great staff, to retain great staff, to positively impact student achievement, to be sustainable and fiscally responsible for the district, and then work towards the district's vision of excellence for all, which some people might think is just a tagline. Oh yeah, I throw the vision in there. But I think there's some strategic things we do that truly make this a compensation model designed to be for all students and the benefit of all of them. Before I get into the meat of the document, I think there are some misconceptions about some of the why as to why we are now changing from the framework that was adopted in 2013 and then put into effect in 2014. I know I read in some of the local media outlets concern about, oh gosh, now we're not going to have a merit pay system, and now we won't have a system that effectively delineates our best teachers, from our average teachers, from our low-performing teachers, and compensates them appropriately. That was one thing I heard. And I think it's important for anyone with those kinds of concerns as to why we'd be leaving the model we're in to go to Appendix A. And the reason Appendix A exists is really to, for lack of a better term, do a little bit of an autopsy on the previous framework and what it did not accomplish. Because all those items I just discussed were not effectively accomplished in any way, and in some ways were counterproductive in the last model. The idea that the model delineated different teacher groups and things like that, that didn't happen in practice. Basically, all teachers, virtually all teachers, 98 to 99% of teachers made the same increases as everyone else in the old model. That model was not effective. If that was the goal, as some community members may have believed, it was not accomplishing that. On top of that, accurately measuring achievement and impact was very ineffective in the previous model, which is why multiple boards said, all right, we need to look at this again. One example for that comes to mind for me is we had one school, as part of the many points you could earn one year, did not earn all of its school growth points in the old framework. That same school with those same scores, that same year made one of the largest jumps in the state report card based on growth that we've seen in our district, right? So over here you've got the state report card saying this is great, yet we negatively compensated people. And that really speaks to when you look at the national research around attempts to integrate that kind of model in practice, just is not doable, not effective, and the ability just isn't there in terms of the tools to accomplish that. Perhaps the biggest thing was the negative impact on culture that the previous framework had, as you've probably heard numerous times. And then one of the other pieces is sustainability. The ability to review how that model operated, the ability to deliver on some of the promises made in there in light of not knowing where state budgets were heading was a big problem with that previous model. So that's enough on where we've been. Talk about where we're heading. Basically looking at two primary pay categories, okay? You've got your salary, which is subject to across-the-board increases issued by the board at the board's discretion each year. And then you've got expertise pay. So your across-the-board increases that, when the administration brings a recommendation to the board each year following negotiations and things like that, those can apply to all staff. But we want to also recognize the ability of staff to be engaged in growing their expertise and the impact that makes on student achievement. So the second piece, the expertise pay, looks at a variety of ways that employees can be compensated, whether it's master's degrees in critical areas, licensures in critical areas, national board certification, and then really the biggest new piece, which is micro endorsement, which we talked about. The expertise pay is really looked at on a separate pot. However, one thing, we did have some of those expertise pays in the previous model, yet the amounts we compensated for them were never reviewed. One of the problems with the old model is everything was locked into that one document, that one framework document, and it didn't come up for annual review of sustainability. Is it meeting its goals? Do we need, has the value of one of these items, like a license or additional degree, increased since the previous year? That kind of reflection wasn't part of the old document. So what we really end up doing is having our compensation model document, which, I know some people would like to see more dollars and numbers in here. That's not what this document accomplishes. This accomplishes how we're going to deliver the types of compensation that we're talking about. But then it outlines a process for annually presenting to the board the dollar amounts that we're really talking about. That allows us to be flexible to whatever the state budget situation ends up being, allows us to be flexible to what our teacher retention rate is. If we're seeing, we've had a consistently strong teacher retention rate, but if that were to change, I want the board to be able to react quickly the following year to adjust to that. In terms of the micro endorsement piece, I know I shared some information with staff around some of the things that we're looking at with that. Some of the micro credentials that compiled together to form a micro endorsement. A lot of what's out there we didn't feel was high quality enough to really impact student achievement and be worthy of compensation. So we looked in a lot of different areas and have found some really encouraging partnerships with local education institutions. Concordia is one that we're far into right now, but also open to others as well. Concordia University has really worked with us to put together some options that we can cluster a few key college courses in areas that the district is really focused on, and upon completion of those, add additional expertise pay. In fact, Concordia has been such a great partner on this and so interested in working with us being a nearby district, they have already agreed to offer all of our employees, teachers, support staff, everyone, 25% discount on not only all of their tuition for education programs, but MBA and a number of other programs as well. So excited about where that can take us. They've also been really flexible about customizing micro-endorsements. That way, we aren't operating a giant apparatus here in the district office of coordinating who's teaching micro-credentials and who's doing this and who's covering this and how, and who's approving this and who's writing the syllabus. We can go to some proven, post-secondary ed is a very proven, obviously, vendor for those sorts of things. We tell them what we're looking for, they design it, we review it, and then it's available for our staff. So if we look at a particular course that they have, perhaps in reading, and we say, hey, we like the content here, we'd love for there to be some more classroom in practice application to be part of that, they'll adjust their course to meet what we want, which I think is a really fantastic option for us. Some other elements of the model that you'll see, the novice salary scale is presented in a separate document along with all those expertise pays on an annual basis. One of the problems we've run into is in the existing framework, the novice salary scale was in that framework. Therefore, since we didn't have an annual review process, we've had the same starting pay since 2014 for teachers. So while other districts have increased that amount, we've been stagnant. By bringing that scale to the board on an annual basis, we'll be able to adapt regularly. That novice teacher salary scale is not in your attachments right now. It says TBD. We've looked at a number of options. Right now, we're collecting information. We're about done with that, of collecting information from our neighbors around where they're going to be for next year, because we need to play catch up. And we want to make sure that we're playing catch up correctly with our neighbors in that. And then on top of that, we want to also look at how are we competing, not just in year 1, but 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5, to make sure that, ultimately, if people are going to stay here, this needs to be a pay level that is able to sustain your career and be a family-sustaining career, that it's not where you have to constantly have second jobs and things like that. We want this to be a profession that people can focus on. So by the March 23rd date, I do plan to have novice levels in there for you to take a look at. One of the items that is in the document that you'll see is a salary ceiling, but I want to define what that means, okay? As we attended a large compensation conference with about 93 other HR professionals in Wisconsin recently, worked around what a lot of other districts are doing. I've reviewed dozens of compensation models from the area. Salary ceilings, red circling, whatever you want to call it, are pretty common in all industries, and they're common in more than half of the compensation models within school districts that I looked at. However, we also know it's very disengaging to freeze someone's salary at a level. So what we've talked about in both with Superintendent Kierkegaard, Mr. Sarno, is a salary ceiling that you're still eligible for a portion of across-the-board raises. But what we really need to make sure is that we're able to sustain both ends of our scale. And right now, that's a little bit of a struggle. Now, salary ceiling, which if you're at that number, you're still eligible for a portion of the across-the-board raise. That excludes all of the expertise pay. So if you're going to continue to look at getting that additional micro-endorsement or an additional licensure, you can still accelerate your pay well beyond the ceiling because of the opportunities that we're providing. And I think one of the positives that hopefully would lead to greater engagement with the compensation model is, as a teacher, I do get a choice. I can choose to try and accelerate my pay even faster there is an investment to be made, absolutely, in continuing education or whatnot, or national boards and energy that they have to put into that. But they have that option, and I don't think you are going to find a lot of places that have that much ownership put in the hands of the employee for that opportunity. The last piece I'll talk about before taking other questions is the annual decision piece. So I talked a little bit about that, but it actually highlights later in the document what are annual decisions the board needs to make, annual things that need to be presented to the board for review each year. That was really missing from the previous framework, and I think one of the things that led to its detriment. We'll annually present what micro endorsements are available and those sorts of things, annually the across-the-board raises, and it allows us to adapt to inflation and what the state budget is. I just saw the other day in the paper another district towards Waukesha County that has some guarantees in their compensation model, and it's unfortunately, because it's not responsive to wherever the state budget is going and inflation, those sorts of things, now they're talking about operational referendums just to sustain themselves. This model is designed to avoid those types of oh no moments and really get us to be in a consistently sustainable spot. So we'll have a big discussion on the 23rd, but I definitely want to know what things are most making you curious right now and what kind of answers and things like that you'd like us to bring on the 23rd.
So the two-page document that the headline is 2020, 2021, that is something that would be brought in front of the board on an annual basis to potentially adjust the dollar amounts that are in that document, which includes things like the salary ceiling and the novice scale.
So one
among
thing
other
you'll
things.
see on there is the amounts under master's degree and licensure are increased on here as opposed to last year. In fact, what I did is I took CPI since 2014, added it to those amounts, because we really, while someone may have had a percentage increase in their salary for a number of years, this component has remained the same, making this less valuable to the employee. So we've increased the master's amount by $300 and the licensure amount by $100, and that's basically keeping up with inflation.
I got a question on the salary ceiling, or maybe for further discussion on what, you don't have to answer this now, but what percentage, so I see 75,000 in here, what percentage of teachers is that going to affect?
So we've looked at a lot of different models. At the 78,000, I was just looking, I'm trying to remember which numbers are on top of my head. At 78,000, we were talking about 50 teachers. At 80,000, we were talking about 30 teachers. I can't remember off the top of my head right now what the 75,000 number was, but I will bring it. But that we have 450 teachers altogether. So it kind of gives you an idea that the 78,000 number is, roughly 1/9 of our teaching staff, 11% or whatnot. Again, that excludes their expertise pays, unless those expertise pays were earned prior to 2014, in which case back then the district just rolled those into salary. So I can't give you an exact number, but it's less than 100 teachers, more than 50, probably closer to that 70, 75 range, but I'll bring that to the work session.
And second question on, you're talking the salary ceiling would be across the board. CTE, I know, science, and you're talking high school, K through 12, and across the board, no matter what subject matter they're teaching?
So on page 12, we get into market adjustments, and market adjustments are not subject to the salary ceiling. And that's just, some people are going to say it's not fair, some people say it should be. Unfortunately, market adjustments are what you do in order to make sure you can fill the positions you have. Okay. So it does allow us that flexibility still.
If you're going to look at the data of teachers over the 75 salary ceiling, could you show what the average tenure of those teachers are? Mm-hmm. Because I think you can assume that these are our most tenured teachers who have been here a long time.
Lanny, am I correct in that the ceiling has no impact on current salaries other than the increase will have.
Correct.
Yeah, so
So we're
if you're
not-
at
we don't take
$90,000
people-
salary, see,
Right.
you're not going backwards, you're going to stay where you're at. You just might not get the same increase as somebody else. You'll get an increase, but not the same increase.
Nobody goes backwards, but it's really an issue of making sure that it's, when you think about pay ranges, you all work in the private sector, right? You have certain pay ranges for most positions, and when you get too far to one end on some of them without having some sort of ceiling, red circling, whatever you want to call it, effect, you lose the financial flexibility to recruit at the other end as well. And we don't, it is a, we don't want to say we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, but we have to pay everyone, and we have to somehow do that in a balanced way that allows us to attract and retain teachers. I saw many district compensation models that used a salary ceiling as a true freezing. We didn't think that was appropriate, but there are many out there that do that. I don't think it accomplishes some of the goals that we want to accomplish in terms of keeping our staff engaged once they hit those levels.
We had a comment several years ago, or last year, when we had across-the-board increase, and there were teachers who would say that this was the first real increase they had in 5 years, because they had one-time money before, and they always got the same one-time money. I gave $1,000, well, next year you got $1,000, but we took away the first 1,000. So for 4 years or 5 years in a row, they had that same one-time money of $1,000, and they were accurate when they say they hadn't had an increase for X amount of time because we gave them the same one-time money over and over and over again. They never grew. And so whatever you decide on as the numbers, this does have a mechanism in place so that it's not one-time money that reverts the following year to you have to go back and you get the same $500 over again or the same $1,000 over again. It's new money on top of that.
I mean, the ceiling certainly is one of the tougher things to really figure out, right? I mean, if you take it out, you can see some benefit to certain employee groups. At the same time, you see how that might hurt us in our ability to attract other employee groups and retain them. It's a difficult decision. I think that's one area that definitely is deserving a lot of discussion at our committee meeting.
I think that is important, but is also just as important as the novice, 1 through 5 year teachers. If we want to attract good new teachers, and what are we going to pay them and to attract and keep them? So,
And I know I'm not telling you anything new, but anyone watching, we don't get to control how much revenue comes in. The dollar amount the state gives us is what we have, and we have to make our best decisions with what we've got.
So with the novice amount, when we increase that, then we also have to make sure that we don't leapfrog over somebody else.
Correct.
And so then, as that novice increases from 43 to 47 or 45, or whatever the case might be, then that impacts maybe that 5th year, 6th year, 7th year teacher as well, because what we don't want to do is to leapfrog over top of somebody.
And that's really the big impact, because it was easy for us to calculate, okay, if we move people in years 1 through 4, it's this. But then as we look at that leapfrogging, that's where we have to really allocate our budget dollars carefully this year.
So Lenny, as you looked at, I know you're trying to build a plan that will last into the future. So as we're looking at that, and it sounds like you've made a good connection with Concordia, but have you talked to any of the UW systems? I mean, are they graduating less teachers than they have in the past, more teachers? I mean, we know that in general, many of the universities are suffering with attendance, that maybe they're down. So, I mean, where is teaching? I feel like somewhat, there are some people who are like, gee, that's a lot of abuse for not a lot of money. So, I mean, where are we, and how hard do you predict it to be in the future to recruit teachers or find new teachers?
On the UW side, first of all, we reach out to a lot of universities. With the public, they're not as eager to be flexible and work with us. And they also have to go to their boards for a lot of approvals on things that the Concordia and some of the privates don't. So I did want to state that. It's not that we're trying to exclude one group. Overall, last year, there was last year's report put out by DPI Licensing. Over the last 5 years, there's 31% fewer teachers than there were 5 years ago. When you take the number exiting the field and retiring and the number of new licenses issued, it's issues lapsed, issues gained, we're down 31%. And we're not the worst in the Midwest, which is really frightening. I want to say it was Michigan down almost half. It's not good, right? So we're in a very difficult environment trying to attract and retain staff in light of that. I mean, we have positions posted right now, and we're fighting tooth and nail with everyone in order to recruit them. But yeah, we are down over 5 years, 30% of our teachers in the state of Wisconsin, according to licensing.
I just think that's an important factor to keep in mind. I mean, obviously, we want a program that's sustainable. We want something that stays in budget. But like many of us in our own industries, I mean, there just aren't as many people applying for jobs. And, you know, that's it's hurting your ability as an employer to try and stay within your budget. I mean, we're all having to offer different items to enhance or entice people to take positions. So I think that that's important that we all keep that in mind. I mean, a school district is no different than West Bend Mutual or Caterpillar or wherever. I mean, we're all struggling to find good, solid employees, and then to retain them is also critical, because we all know it costs so much more money to bring in someone new rather than to retain someone. So, I mean, I realize it's a delicate balancing act, and I just think it's important for people to understand that, you know, if we have 30% less teachers available, that's really hurting our ability. I mean, we could have positions that you're really searching high and low for, I assume. I mean, I'm assuming in some areas it's real tough.
I mean, there's a cohort of HR departments around the state that communicate often, and I mean, there are frequent emails. Does anyone desperately, I need X, does anyone have anyone, any retiree, anyone? Those emails are weekly in the area. You're absolutely right.
Any more questions on this tonight?
Well, maybe the last comment that I have for the work session maybe is, have the teachers provided feedback to this plan?
So this
or-
plan, we did not put before teachers yet. In fact, when you saw it, or when the public saw it, because it went into the public side of the board docs, when it went public on Friday, that's the first time it's gone public. What we tried to do was capture the overall sentiment of the 2 different compensation committees that have taken place over 3 years. And the general sentiment was a model that recognized both continued effective performance alongside continuing education is where we wanted to go. And then that was presented to the board back last year, May. And then that's what we discussed in January when we went from there. There's certainly, depending on especially where you are in your career and those sorts of things, going to provide a variety of opinions on what you think of the model and that sort of thing. But that's where we use that committee input to kind of come up with general guiding principles and then went from there. Because in reality, as we analyze these, your specific situation, what season of life you're in, is going to heavily impact your thought on this compensation model. Better, worse, whatever.
Very good. We'll see it again on March 23rd, correct?
March 23rd, yep.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent Kierkegaard.
The only comment that I would have is it's an ongoing, everyday occurrence with the coronavirus and what do we do? And so we're truly working closely with DPI. We're working closely with the Department of Health. We will keep you posted as we get new information. We're planning for the worst and hoping for the best. And so we don't know what that means. Visited today in Cabinet. We have another meeting scheduled for tomorrow to look at, are there, if worst case scenario and we have to close school down for a while, what do we do? Okay, do we have the ability to do online classes? Well, maybe for some of the grades, but not probably for all of them. And so how does that work? Are there other options available? If we do that, are we playing a game to get minutes, or are we really working on quality instruction? And so there's just a lot of ifs and buts, and it really will be, like I said, every day is a little bit different, and so hopefully we'll come up with some kind of a vaccine sooner rather than later. That doesn't sound probable, but we'll just keep you posted and keep our public posted and keep the safety of our students and community at the forefront and go from there.
Superintendent, just to help reassure the public, this is something that all districts really have faced with, let's say, the normal flu or a nasty strain of the flu. This is something that you hear about schools being shut down, such. So my guess is these are plans that are generally in place. It's just a matter of when to exercise them.
That's correct. The one big difference is that if you have a large number of kids out with the flu, you might close it down for a day or two, or maybe it's Wednesday and you don't come back until Monday. Where what we're seeing with this is that in most cases, it's 14 days. It's 2 weeks of closures. And so not always, if you've been able to isolate early on, maybe that's not the case. But there's so many more uncertainties with this than there is with just the normal flu. And you look at some of the data that, unfortunately, we have literally 20 to 40,000 people a year die from the flu, okay? But that might be hundreds of thousands infected. In our case, the coronavirus is a little bit different, and there's so many uncertainties. One of the good things is it doesn't seem to be impacting kids as much as it does older people, and so that's at least from a school perspective a positive. If you're a gray-haired superintendent, maybe not so much, but at least for the kids' perspective, that's good news. But
Thank you. I actually have maybe one question on our superintendent search. I know the applicants and all, it's a confidential process, but maybe this is to promote that we're entering a final stretch of candidates. We have some excellent candidates, even internal and external, and maybe this is a board member that please apply, everyone that wants to, and maybe any updates on that?
And I truly am out of the picture, but Andy isn't. So Andy, give us a little bit of update where we're at.
Yeah, I contacted Brian Haynes earlier today, made sure it was okay to share the information. To date, as of about noon, we'd received a completed 11 applicants, and there's probably at least another handful, if not 2 handfuls, of inquiries, applicants the process in process. So it does close later this week. Then over the next couple of weeks, Brian Haynes with Mac and Jake will be screening applicants, reviewing those. And then as of right now, I still have slated Thursday, April 2nd for review by the board to go over those candidates with Brian Haynes on site and determining who we'd like to interview at that point in time. So 11, but the number will grow, could potentially double by Thursday. I think it's going to be a pretty good mix of candidates.
Great. Our next board meeting is a week from today at 5:30 right here in the ESC conference room, and that will be focused on facilities. We also have our monthly committee of a whole meeting on March 23rd, again at 5:30 in this same room, with more discussion on the compensation model and reports from the East and West High Schools. I think we will also have a policy committee that same day on the 23rd, and so that will probably be at 4 o'clock or 4:30. We'll let Laura and you and Jen Roush decide how much time we need for that, so we'll make sure that's posted. Any questions on our calendars? All right, any follow-up items?
I move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn in a second. Any questions, comments, discussions? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign? Oh, thank you very much. We are adjourned.